You're 0 for 3 on the clap.
This is true. I am.
Do you want to try to give it another shot?
Absolutely not. I want you to give it another shot. You go
Can you
for
see
it.
my hands?
Okay, I'm going to do it. Ready?
Yes, you're going to do it. First try, you're going to nail it. Don't think about it. Just do it. Ready? Go. Beautiful.
Excellent.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Editing the Academy. I am Daryl, one of your co-hosts.
I am Laura, the other co-host.
And there we go. Okay, because folks always get confused. What's the year that we're doing this time?
We are doing movies that came out, were produced between January 1st and December 31st, 1973, and they were awarded Best Picture in April of 1974.
All right, and what are the 5 films that we're going to do today?
We are going to do American Graffiti, Cries and Whispers, The Exorcist, A Touch of Class, and The Sting, which was the winner of the Best Picture.
Okay, I think this is going to be an interesting one. If you don't mind, I'm going to have you try to guess my pick at the end.
Okay.
Because typically I guess yours.
Yes.
So I'm gonna see. And what do you want to start with? Obviously, like always, we'll do The Sting last because that one won. What do you want to start with?
Let's go alphabetical and start with American Graffiti.
Okay, hold on 2 seconds while I pull up all the nominations for American Graffiti.
I also have some comments about like the slate as a whole. Do you want to chat about that at the end as well, or
Yeah.
do you want to start with that?
I don't know what you mean.
I mean, I'll just say tonally, these movies were all over the place.
Oh yeah. Okay. I see what you're saying.
So
Yeah. Some of the years before, they definitely felt like movies from the 70s.
Yes.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yes, this was the most interesting and diverse batch that I've seen to be nominated for Best Picture. To which I went, that was nominated for Best Picture.
Yeah.
Okay. So just wanted to start with that.
Okay, so American Graffiti, it was nominated for Best Picture, Francis Ford Coppola, Best Director, George Lucas, Best Supporting Actress, Candy Clark, Best Story and Screenplay based on factual material, and Best Film Editing. It won nothing. It stars all sorts of people. This was George Lucas's first big film that he ever directed. It was produced by Francis Ford Coppola, coming right off of the previous year, so they were probably in production for this beforehand. Written by Gloria Katz and Lucas, starring Richard Dreyfuss, Ron Howard, Paul Lamont, Harrison Ford, Charles Martin Smith, Cindy Williams, Candy Clark, Mackenzie Phillips, Bo Hopkins, and Wolfman Jack. Okay, so American Graffiti.
Fun facts.
Okay.
All right, so 2 fun facts, one of which is this is one of the most profitable movies in history.
Really?
Because it was made for $500,000. And so the amount that it has made over the years, it's one of the most profitable in history.
Wow.
I thought it was fun.
Yeah.
The other fun fact is the reason Harrison Ford is wearing a cowboy hat is because he refused to cut his hair into the traditional 50s flat top that they wanted, because he thought that potentially he might be doing more contemporary movies in the future. And I think that was a good call on his part.
It was. He went through a bit of a drought after this movie, though.
Yes.
He was struggling to find work until, of course, Star Wars.
Exactly.
Okay. First time ever seeing this one?
First time seeing it all the way through.
Okay. Clips before, like
Exactly.
scanning
I
through.
knew generally what it was about, but I had never seen it start to finish.
Okay.
How about you?
No, this was my second, possibly third time.
Okay.
I remember seeing it once when I was, again, a pretentious person in my 20s. I remembered loving it then, and just the whole vibe of it and the cohesiveness of it, that's what I remembered it being. It was, this time I definitely enjoyed the heck out of it, and I liked the framing of the story in this particular one. Like, this is one of those first films that's like, hey, bunch of high schoolers, what are they going to do next in their life? Let's focus on one night of their life. I don't think it started the trend, but it was definitely one of the early ones. And I liked that each character was very firmly defined pretty quickly, and you got to see their journey. Even though it was only an evening, you got to see them kind of go through some sort of growth journey thing. So I liked how all of the individual character vignettes did tie together. I thought that was a good choice to bring this movie to life. We've talked about that before, how do you tell the story, what is the story that you're trying to tell, because that really does matter. It's not just plot, it's like what are you doing to show us the information.
I felt very much the same. I thought it was a great 2-hour hang. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the characters. For me, it was the first time that I'd seen music used that much to tell the story.
Yep.
And like every song was intentional and every song was of its era, which I don't know when they started doing that. Obviously, you see that today all the time.
Right.
But that's probably the first time I saw that in the 70s, that they were setting the place so intentionally.
Right, and music is part of the story, like the whole Wolfman Jack's character, trying to get the dedications, everybody listening, it is almost a like 7th or 8th character deep in the movie.
Exactly, and I remember my mom used to love this movie because she was a child of the 50s and she went to the sock hops and she thought it really did show kind of what everybody was really doing. She was probably more of the Cindy Williams character than maybe the other character in the movie, but I thought it was really good. I thought also just it was so colorful and bright and active and things were happening all of the time. And I never missed anybody when it went to various vignettes. Like when they were with Mackenzie Aston or wrong kid, Mackenzie Phillips. Wrong kid of a celebrity. When they were with Mackenzie Phillips, like I was really interested in that story. With Richard Dreyfuss, I was interested in that story. So they bounced around and gave me just enough, and I loved the way that was done.
Yeah, it never hung too long on a particular character, so you would get bored of them and wonder what somebody else was doing at that moment. Right, the pacing of it was very well done.
It was very, very well done. I totally agree.
There are some moments in here that I genuinely laughed out loud. I don't think they were as intentionally funny, but when Ron's character is first having his conversation with his girlfriend Cindy, and he's like, "No, when I leave and go to college, we should see other people. I think that would strengthen our relationship."
Oh yes, absolutely.
I was like, that is such a guy thing to say.
I think it was intentionally funny by the screenwriter, but not by Ron Howard.
Yeah.
Exactly. I absolutely thought that too. I was impressed with Cindy Williams. I'm just so used to her as Shirley, and just seeing her, she had a sweetness, a vulnerability. You could see that she was angry at that conversation, but she didn't want him to know it. And so, she didn't blow up until later at the dance, but you could see it happening underneath the surface. So I thought she did an incredible job.
Just a little quick thing, I don't know if you noticed, but one of the license plates was THX1138.
I didn't notice that. Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, that's very cool.
Just little nods here and there.
I like that. I like that.
Okay, so one of the things that I did think, and it was a directorial choice, of course, that I thought worked really well. You spend a lot of time in this movie seeing people through windows driving around cars.
Yes.
And the way they lit them, if you notice, there's some where it's blatantly obvious and others where it's not. But back then, cars used to have that overhead dash. Some still do to this day. But they used those a lot so that the faces would be lit up. They were always on.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, so you could see the faces as they were driving around. I'm sure they may have done some sort of underlighting as well, but that one's one that I definitely noticed they were doing. And those were good choices, because otherwise trying to film something through glass at night, it's just going to be dark as well, And so those little details I thought were very well done.
It's interesting because I don't know that much about the technical pieces, but I know when I'm watching a TV show or something, they will show people in a car and they'll show one person's profile and the window is open, and then they show it from the other side and it's closed, and you know that that's because of lighting and filming and what they're doing. And I never saw that in this movie.
No.
It was very carefully done.
Yeah,
that's interesting because I didn't know about the technical piece, but I knew what I liked and what I saw. The one thing I want your opinion on the title cards at the end.
Okay, that's exactly what I was about to bring up in my criticism section.
As was I. Go for it.
So I didn't think, number one, that they were necessary. I only care about the where are they now if it's really important to the story. Those things will make sense to me if it makes sense to the story. In this case, it would have been fine just to end it with the airplane ride and everybody goes off and you don't know what happened to them, you don't know what they went on to do. That's okay, because the night was all about just exploration and thinking of the future. I don't need to know their future. So I didn't really think that was necessary. And also, Cindy Williams didn't get her own.
None of the women did. It was only the boys.
Right.
Yeah.
I was like, because I can understand if you were telling the story of just these four gentlemen, which they were focused on for the most part, but the women had very large roles. They were dominant in this. Why didn't they get their little end card at the end. If you're going to do it, make it fair.
So George, that was actually, I read something about this, and George Lucas apparently said it would have made it too long to have an additional title card, so he didn't do it. And Pauline Kael, who was a major movie critic back in the day, she called it a chauvinist choice for not doing that very thing. Also, it really brought down the movie. I mean, to know that two of them are dead, one of them, you know, kind of an insurance agent, you know, basically I saw that as he never got out of his hometown.
Right.
He married Cindy Williams and never got out of his hometown. And then the other one, Richard Dreyfuss, a writer in Canada. I read that as draft dodger at the time.
Oh yeah.
So I'm just like, okay, so that's all very sad and dark for such an otherwise, and it wasn't all light and fluffy movie by any stretch. They were, as you said, growing and trying to figure out what is their next step. But it definitely shifted the tone big time, and it was just very sad note to end on.
If I had been the head of a studio at the time greenlighting this movie and watching this movie, I would have been incredibly proud that we were putting this movie out, and absolutely told the director you need to take out the title card, because it changes your movie 100%.
It absolutely does. Nope, I totally agree. The other thing about tone that I wanted to talk about is there were things in there that they could have been dark. They could have been serious. There was a serious car accident. There was a guy comes out of a liquor store shooting up the road.
Which I think was supposed to be
comedic. It was all
comedic.
funny, yeah. And the cop car getting distracted. Like all of these things were done for humor, I think. But again, and then you add with that title card. If any of those what could have been scary moments were actually played for fear and for, you know, like this is bad, I would have been okay with the title card, but everything was for humor.
I did have one question for you. One thing that I don't think, and maybe it was just my watching it, was made, we weren't given an answer to something. The blonde that, I can't remember the character's name, is hanging out with for most of the time, they end up having sex. It is alluded to that she is a prostitute, and by some of the other guys, that when they're hanging out at a different location. So that's alluded to. It's never divulged, it's never told, she never admits it.
Right.
It never comes up. And I know guy talk sometimes, guys will invent things about girls. So I didn't know if that was just like a highlight of guys inventing stories about girls because, I don't know, they don't give them the time of day. Or if in fact she really was, and she was just, for once, enjoying just an evening out with somebody. I was confused with that, but that was the only confusion I had. Was that apparent to you?
It was not, and I had the same confusion.
Okay.
I did not read her as prostitute. If you note, at one point she was really upset because he wasn't going to pay for something, and so like I read her more as, you know, the guy has some responsibilities, I have some responsibilities. You know,
Because she slept with it pretty quick.
Yes, exactly. So, but I think that, you know, you show me a good time, I'm going to show you a good time. Not necessarily a prostitute, but maybe somebody who was a little bit
A good time girl.
A good time girl. That's a great way to put it, because I couldn't think of a way. But she didn't read as that to me, and I agree. I thought it was more boy talk.
Boys being boys?
Yeah.
Okay. Not to just discount that and push that away, because that's not cool, but.
Again, we're looking at a movie in the 70s talking about the 50s.
Correct.
So we have to think about different sensibilities.
Yes. Yeah, I enjoyed this one immensely. I thought the choices that they made were fantastic, so I had a grand old time with it. I got nothing else for this.
Nope, I had a grand old time. The only thing I will say is the costumes and the period pieces all looked very authentic.
Yeah.
I've got a comment I want to come back to when we talk about another movie, and I want to say that this one, everything looked like it was really happening in the 50s.
Yep, okay.
Okay.
Alphabetically is Cries and Whispers next.
Okay.
So, Cries and Whispers, a Swedish film, is 1972 period drama film written and directed by Ingmar Bergman, who is legendary in the film world. Starring Harriet Andersson, Kari, I'm going to mispronounce this, Slywalwan, Ingrid Thulin, and Liv Ullmann. It was nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Screenplay, Best Cinematography, Best Costume Design, and it won for Cinematography, which personally I think it absolutely should have.
I completely agree, yes.
Fascinating facts, go.
Fascinating facts are that Bergman wanted Mia Farrow to play Anna's role.
Really?
The role of the maid. or the housekeeper, not really sure
What?
why.
Help me out. What had Mia Farrow really done at this point? Had she done anything?
Rosemary's Baby.
Oh,
That was
okay.
in the late 60s, right?
I think so.
So yeah, so I think that had
Okay.
already come out. And then the other fun fact is that Liv Ullmann and he had been in a relationship right prior to this movie, and their daughter actually played both the Maria's daughter and the picture of Anna's daughter. It was
Oh.
the same child actress, and it was his daughter.
Okay.
Okay.
So this one I think is probably one we're going to spend a little bit of time on.
I think so.
Sometimes foreign language films can take you out of the film itself because you're both reading and watching and you can't fixate on both.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you watch a movie and you're listening, you can be more, it's not that it's more passive, but all the information can come to you and you can just kind of let it wash over you. Foreign films, if you're having to read a lot of text, sometimes can take you out. You can miss a moment, you can miss a reaction or something like that. I did not feel that one with this one, and primarily I think because all of the action was intentionally, and I'm not going to say that it was overacting at all, but it was big acting. Everybody was big acting in this movie, and I thought that was the right choice for this kind of movie. Sometimes I don't like that. It can take me out if everybody's just like
Emoting
yes.
all over the place. Yeah.
And everybody was throughout this entire movie, and I had no problems with it at all.
And I would say also, I agree with that, and I think the acting of it, the writing was so sparse. They weren't talking a lot.
Yep.
So you weren't able to, you were able to like read the words and then turn right back to the visual aspect of the movie. So you weren't being interrupted by constant dialogue.
Right.
It was a few words and, like you said, big A acting.
And I can't remember when it was in the film that I noticed it, but it was relatively early on, like, you know, a tenth of the way in, realized that another conscious choice of the way this movie was being shown to you is there are a lot of very close-ups.
I had that noted, yeah.
So a lot of the acting is just facial acting, and that, I think that helped in the movie and telling the story, because this is an emotional movie. The plot almost doesn't matter.
No, not at all.
It's just how people feel and their reactions to each other during this difficult time that they're going through. And is it a difficult time? Some people care, some people don't, it seems.
Right.
So it's just all about feelings and emotions. So that choice to bring it right close on the face for a lot of the film, I thought was great. It helped with the feeling of what they were trying to convey. That, and I'm sure you have a lot to say, and the color was
the red.
Awesome.
It was beautiful. I like the word saturated. It was a saturated red that was everywhere.
I had read somewhere that he made the conscious choice because he almost did this in black and white,
which he had done before in a bunch of his movies. Yeah.
And then he's like, no, I'm making a black and red, or I'm making a white and red.
Okay.
And if you notice, that is pretty much what the two colors. All the girls are usually in white, except for the occasional time where they're not.
Right. And that's a funeral garb, really, more than anything. Yeah.
But those are the primary colors throughout. The furniture is draped in white. The walls are all red. Sometimes as they pass through into a room, some of the drapery is white. Sometimes it's a deeper red. Obviously, very conscious choices to set this as a thing. And I think it was a great choice to use red because red is a very bold, almost confrontational color. It does make you feel a particular way when you see that much red and you see it that quickly. So again, I'm a big fan of how movies open in the first 5-10 minutes of a movie. Tone was set right away. You're going to be kind of on edge throughout this entire movie, and that is what I want you to be.
Well, and the other thing I'll comment with the white is it wasn't just white, it was a very lacy white, and it was very feminine white. It was flowing, like most of the dresses had lace, there was lace around their neck, all of the table settings were lacy, you know, and at one point, one of the women was actually working on a needlepoint tatting is what it's called when you're doing that kind of doily work. And so, so it was very feminine as well. So my comments on it was that this was an artist who committed to his vision.
100%.
And so, you know, and I think you actually hit on most of the points I was going to, was the red, that saturated red. I didn't have as much about the white, but I did have the lace, the extreme close-ups, being able, also the jumping back and forth in time. And
That did get a little
it
confusing.
jarred me personally, but again, when I'm talking about him committing to his vision, is
Yeah.
he had a very distinct style. I thought it was a very interesting choice that he had the same actress play one of the daughters and the mother.
Mhm.
So Liv Ullmann was playing, that confused me, I'll be honest, but I understood like he wanted kind of that through line to play. So yeah, to me it was I will be honest with you, not my particular cup of tea when it comes to the films. I'm looking for something, you know, more on the entertainment view, but it's a beautiful film. It's an absolutely beautiful film, and I have kind of a lot of other positives to it. The acting was another one.
Before you move on, the time jumps. A lot of times when you do flashbacks, they're to illustrate, like The Godfather Part 2, when they do flashbacks, is to illustrate what you've either just been shown or about to be shown. Like they're for explanation. These weren't as explanatory.
Yes.
They were to give you, again, more of emotional background for somebody than this is the rationale for why they're doing something. So you're right, and I've talked about this before on this podcast, where I am a sucker for a film that is 100% itself.
Yes,
and this one is 100% itself. It does not apologize, it does not shy away, it all the way through is 100% what it wants to be.
I mean, from the very beginning, it is a woman in anguish, and you see it, you feel it, it's visceral, and there's no words. I mean, how long is it before somebody actually speaks in the movie? And because you're just seeing it up close, you see the pain on her face. The actresses, I thought, were all beautiful. The men were superfluous, which is really interesting because every movie we've seen up till now, it's very hard to find those female roles. And this is all about the women. The men, you know, they had an important role to play in how they framed the women. You didn't know anything about them, and you didn't need to.
Yeah, the only thing, the doctor who one had a crush on and they'd had a relationship prior, that was a little bit important, but not necessarily that important. Like, and this is what I mean by with the flashbacks. You eventually everything is answered for you. Like I had that question very early on in the movie where I think it's Maria, the one with the red hair, who is very seriously coming on to him. They kiss, and then he basically is like, no. I was like, what is going on there? Right before that, the woman who was dying takes his hand and puts it on her, and so you're wondering, does she have a crush on him? Is there some sort of relationship there? And it's only later on in the film that those questions are actually answered for you, but those are the emotional things that are necessary to help you carry through as you watch the relationships with these people. So again, fantastic job with it.
The other, to me, interesting unanswered question was, who is the father of Anna's daughter? Because they're in a pretty insular world, and so there are not that many men around. And so, like, in my mind, I was wondering if it was the doctor or one of the husbands or the father that you never see.
Right.
I mean, you know, we don't need to know and we never will know, but I just thought it was interesting that they never named who that was. There was no picture of her and a husband.
No,
it was just the child.
Yep. The only real criticism I can draw from this, and this is probably me not understanding the artistic expression that was trying to go, is the end, right towards the end, Anna's already died, but then there's that dream sequence where she comes to life, puts her hands on the sister, she visits both sisters, and for 99% of that, you never see her, you just see her hands and her talking, but then at the very end, she comes up and wraps around one of her sisters. I didn't understand the rationale to show her. If you've done, you know, most of these two scenes with just her voice, that seemed more powerful to me than to actually have her then, quote unquote, fully come to life and you then see her on screen interacting with one of her sisters. I liked it if that part had not been done, but again, I probably missed something because...
Well, I was thinking the same thing about myself, is that, okay, I'm probably not smart enough to pick up on what he was trying to get to, because I thought it had something to do with touch. Because Karen, the one...
Yeah, they don't touch each other.
Exactly, and Karen was you know, don't touch me, and so she walked away before Agnes could touch her. At least Maria kind of let her touch her, and then, like, recoiled and ran out of the room.
Right.
So that's the only thing I thought was just like their
No, that's-
levels of comfort with touch. One was absolutely not, I need to leave. The other one thought she could handle it and then also couldn't handle it.
And because it does become clear that the reason Maria and the third sister, the one who doesn't like to be touched, whose name is Karen, the only reason they ever have any sort of interaction with each other is because they are sisters with Anna.
Yes.
That is it. And that
Agnes,
sorry.
Yep.
It takes a little while to understand that dynamic, but
Yes.
once you do, the information is given out very slowly. It is not heavy-handed. It is not explained. You are allowed to figure these things out by watching the emotions and the interactions with people. And it takes a while to realize, oh, you two would never ever talk with each other if you were not sisters and if Agnes was not there.
And probably will not in the future. Yeah. Yep, exactly.
I will say, I was so pleasantly surprised by this one. I've seen some of Ingmar's films before, and they're always deep, big, representational kind of movies. And that's fine. You usually have to be in the mood for that kind of thing. And I didn't know what to expect from this one, but very quickly I was like, oh, I'm in for the ride. I'm in on this journey, no problem.
I felt I've never seen a Bergman film before, and I just knew from the history of what he does and his reputation. Same thing is I absolutely enjoyed it. I was amazed by his artistry, and I think that's it. I appreciated his artistry more than I necessarily was entertained by the film, but it was beautifully done.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Let's move on then to, unless you had anything else to say.
Yep, I'm good.
Exorcist is next.
Okay.
All right. The Exorcist, 1973, supernatural horror film. I had never seen this one before. Directed by William Friedkin, screenplay by William Peter Blatty, based on his book, which only came out a couple years earlier. Film stars Ellen Burstyn, Max von Sydow, Jason Miller, and Linda Blair. It was nominated for a ton of stuff. Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actor, Best Supporting Actress, Best Screenplay, Best Art Direction, Best Cinematography, Best Film Editing, Best Sound. It won for Sound and Screenplay. This is a horror film.
Yes.
As you are well aware, I do not like horror films because jump scares,
And I love horror films, so we knew this was going to be interesting coming in.
And I didn't know what kind of horror film this was going to be, because I have seen enough horror films to know that there are many different styles.
Yes.
There's the jump scares constantly, the worst films ever invented, ever.
Love a jump scare.
There's the straight up slasher films.
Yep.
There's the, the 1980s, somebody's just running around killing people and, oh, there are breasts for no apparent reason.
And don't have sex because you will die.
Yeah. And anyway, there's tons of different ones. I did not know what this one was going to be, and I'm going to shock you to say the following. I was bored.
Really?
I was bored watching this movie.
Interesting.
I was bored.
That. Okay. I will say the beginning of the movie is definitely, it takes a long time to get
so
where
much
we need to
character
go.
development.
Yes, interesting. That's interesting. Okay. I loved it. But I am predisposed to liking it because I'm predisposed to horror movies as a whole. I will tell you, I don't think it aged well. I think I've been trying, as we've been going through this process, to try to get to, whoops, I just lost my notes. I'm trying to get to the place where I'm looking at it through a 1970s something lens.
Yep.
But this one just alone, it did not age well. I think that there was a lot of, what's her name? Ellen Burstyn. So she was, I think, trying to engage Linda Blair in some ad-libbing, and she had the skills Linda Blair maybe did not. So you could definitely, you could definitely see some weakness in that. There was too much character development. There was too much on the older priest. I really liked the character development on the younger priest, and I liked the fact that it was not a traditional horror movie. I mean, it was a little bit of a psychological thriller, a little bit of a medical thriller. So I want to hear what you have to say about it.
So I thought, first off, this has become quite the iconic film. People reference it quite often. And I thought, watching it for the first time, interesting choice to open up what is essentially a Christian-based film with an Arabic call to prayer. That was just an interesting choice. The development of each of the characters it took a long time to have the story get going. I know the themes they were playing with. One of the main ones is this a psychological issue? Is this a medical issue? Is this actually an exorcism? Is she being truly possessed by a demon? That's what the film is wrestling with as we go through. And all of them are discounted until, of course, the end, and we have an actual exorcism, and everything's fine, except for people die.
Speaking of which, did you expect the ending? Did you expect both priests to die? Spoiler alert for 50-year-old movie. Yeah.
Expect it? No, but honestly, like I said, didn't care. I did not care.
All right. I enjoyed the priest's backstory of his mother and kind of what was happening there and why. I love that they gave you hints of backstory and didn't go thoroughly into the backstory. So like there's something going on there. He had something in his background. His role in and of itself. Why did they need a psychiatrist for the priests of Georgetown? I thought that was interesting. At one point the mother says to the daughter something about, like you'll feel better when you take your pills and, so like she's obviously had some mental health issues in the past. So there was a lot there that they gave you little breadcrumbs for, and I didn't necessarily need more, and I enjoyed the fact that I filled in the blanks.
Okay, I'm going to disagree with you, and I'll give you a very easy example. The young priest character I thought they were trying to set him up to be conflicted about this process overall. He mentions, he's never actually seen an exorcism. The last one was 50 or 60 years ago.
Right.
He admits to one of the other priests that he's questioning his faith. So I see what they were trying to do with him, is having this man be conflicted, skeptical already, and then having to go through this process and seeing it real for the first time.
Right.
I think all of that setup did not pay off. It did not matter. None of that mattered.
See, I thought it paid off with him taking the demon into his own body. So for me, that was all right. So if I have to explain it to that extent, obviously it doesn't work for you, for the audience, but for me, it was exactly that he was conflicted. He thought this was about mental illness and schizophrenia, and we have so many more tools now, so it can't possibly be an exorcism. So to me, it was when he invited the demon into his body, he was able to believe that the demon was there, or the demon couldn't jump in, and also had still the moral strength to be able to kill himself and therefore the demon.
Okay.
So
I don't buy it, but okay.
Okay.
I mean, I can see that was the angle that they were shooting for.
Yeah.
I just don't think they did a good enough job, if indeed that was what they were going for. And I think you're right. That is probably what they were striving to have happen.
But it just didn't work for you.
It did not work for me. I don't think it was handled well. Also, you have these three fantastic elements that you're dealing with. You're dealing with, is this a medical issue? Is this a psychological issue? Or is this truly a demon possession? Three things. Each one, essentially, except for obviously the exorcism, gets eliminated.
Right.
And it's the medical profession that ends up saying, hey, heard about this thing called exorcism?
Yes.
Never happened.
But I think they were saying it as more of a placebo effect. That if you go through, I didn't see that they were saying it as if they believed it. I thought that they were saying it as, go through this exorcism and that will allow somebody to believe they have been cleansed.
Yes, and they were very clear, like, that...
We don't buy it, but yeah.
All
right, couple more things that I think were problems that I will give you was, weird things happened that no one commented on, and that made me insane. So like the clock stopped when they have this like symbol, and somebody should have noticed that. And also when she is up in the attic and she's got a candle and suddenly it flames up, like, okay, look into a gas leak. Like there are reasons that you need to actually be concerned about some of the mundane type things that were happening. It doesn't have to be your daughter's head spinning around and the bed jumping up and down. Like, look into the fact that your candle just bursts into flames without you doing anything. So I thought that was a problem, and I thought there was way too much medical stuff for, like, okay, you need to cross this off the list and move on to the exorcism. So
and we haven't even
it wasn't paced very well.
Yeah, and we haven't even touched on the fact that, there's a detective trying to figure out the murder because she threw somebody out the window.
Worst detective ever.
Yeah, he's a horrible detective, and also that plot did nothing for the story. It didn't
Yes.
really advance the story. It didn't set anything tonally or anything. I was like, it is irrelevant that you are chasing down this mystery to this entire story. You bring nothing to the table.
Because they're gonna cover it up anyway. Because what is that? That was the other thing that I wondered is like, okay, what is this detective gonna do now? He's got 2 dead priests. He's got a little girl who's, you know, in all kinds of bodily fluids on her, and he's gonna have a difficult day trying to explain things. I will say that these two, between this movie and the other one that we just talked about, not a good day for taking care of your lady parts. So it was really quite disturbing to watch. So between those 2 movies, but anyway.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Is that all of them?
A Touch of Class.
Oh, right. A Touch of Class.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say you forgot it because that is the weirdest Best Picture nominee that I just don't understand.
I will agree. I was surprised, and I didn't do it this time. I'm so sorry. I didn't do the other films that came out that particular year. But you're right. So, A Touch of Class. A Touch of Class. Let's talk about A Touch of Class. 1973 British romantic comedy, produced and directed by Melvin Frank, starring George Segal, Glenda Jackson, Hildegard Neal, Paul Sorvino, who Paul was great, and Kay Callan. Nominated for Best Picture, Best Actress, Original Screenplay, Original Dramatic Score, and Best Song, and it won. Glenda Jackson won for Best Actress, which I think she stole the show in this.
100%, yeah.
Fascinating Facts.
Fascinating Facts is that they offered the role to Cary Grant, who turned it down because he was still in retirement, stayed in retirement. And then they offered it to Roger Moore, and he said, "Thank you, I'm going to go off and be 007." And he went and made the first Bond movie.
Oh.
So the other Fascinating Facts, maybe only fascinating to me,
Okay.
which is at the very end when she doesn't get into the cab with the other guy. That actor was played by Stuart Damon, who went on to play Dr. Alan Quatermain for 30 years on General Hospital, and I loved him throughout the 80s. So,
Okay.
but there you go. But he was on TV for like 37 years.
Wow.
So anyway.
Okay, so this movie overall is just very strange. And I'm going to say that it's strange in a good way. It tried to do something, but what it was trying to do, and I think it succeeded, was just odd. Like, okay, sure, you can do that. Why? I don't know, but okay, you can do that. That's fine. It's like it's like eating a chocolate covered raisin. Like, you can, but why would you?
So I wrote down in my notes, this was a fun little romp about despicable people trying to get away with having an affair, and it didn't seem weighty enough to be a Best Picture nominee. And then at the end, it wasn't a fun little romp anymore. So it was for the most part, it went to slapstick in a bunch of places, and they did it well. It was fun. It was, you know, they had the car and the luggage and the back goes out and all of those things. I didn't understand why it was a Best Picture nominee. I thought George Segal is wildly charming, very charismatic. I can see why you'd want to have an affair with him.
That was a little shocking to me how upfront he is.
Absolutely, and then she was totally fine with it. Yeah. And Paul Sorvino as well. He's like, well, when I have my affairs, this is how they turn out. It just seemed to be we're in the 70s and everyone's sleeping around now is the way that, you know. Well, and also they were in England, so I'm wondering, very continental thing to do. But yeah, I agree with you with Glenda Jackson, right? She was charming and sophisticated and just well dressed and funny and dry.
Yeah, like
I liked that.
I would love to hang out with her for a while.
Yes.
She just seems like she has my kind of sensibility that I enjoy, which is incredibly sarcastic but very meaningful at the same time.
Yeah.
I loved her as a character. I have no idea why she was hooking up with this guy, except for she was probably just bored and nothing had to happen with this guy because he's already married, so there's no attachments, whatever. And then, of course, there are attachments. I found it interesting that they end up not liking each other, despising each other, and that turns them both on.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, okay, so the first time was fine, but it's more exciting if you don't like each other. I mean, I get a hate fuck every now and then, but really, like, I don't.
I in that same time frame, the thing I liked about it was that they had a very frank conversation about sex.
Yeah.
I think the movies of this time showed a lot of sex, and they were very excited they were able to do that. But not many talked about it. And this was a woman saying, yeah, I didn't have as much fun as you did.
Yes, and he did not take
And
that
he did
well.
not take that well at all. But like, I thought that was fantastic. She's like, I'm here for this, and this did not necessarily deliver the way I wanted, and that's fine. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Don't work yourself up about it. He worked himself up about it, and then they got on to the hate sex.
The guy in me would be like, oh, okay, well, let's do it again, and
give me some pointers.
Yeah, tell me what I'm doing that you don't like, so that I can do the job that I'm supposed to do, rather than like the anger that.
1973 versus 2024.
Yeah, his ego was just instantly destroyed, and he could not handle it.
Yeah, but again, it was an interesting, frank conversation that I'm not used to seeing in movies.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really don't have a lot on this one. I just. Okay, you made this film, great.
Yeah, well, it's just, to me, was the change in tone of, it was going to be kind of like a sex comedy romp, and then it turned into like slapstick as they got to the hotel, and then again it became almost a romance of they really were falling for each other, and the obstacles in the way are his wife, which you've known about all along. And then it kind of was wistful and sad at the end. So it just couldn't hold a tone for me, and I wasn't sure how I was supposed to feel. The Way We Were came out the same year.
Oh, okay.
And so again, two movies where the leads do not end up together, and it was very interesting to me. I'm not a fan of The Way We Were myself, except for the last 10 minutes, which I think are just
You're
wonderfully
welling up
done.
a little bit. I can see it.
It's so sad. But the last 10 minutes, which I think they do beautifully, and this one falls in it.
All right, shall we move on to the last one?
Let's do it.
Okay, so the big one, the winner for the year, The Sting. This is the pairing up. You can obviously tell why this movie got made. It
Yes.
got made because of Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid.
Mm-hmm.
So this is Paul Newman, Robert Redford, Robert Shaw were the stars, directed by George Roy Hill. He had previously directed Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, so you've got the big three coming back to try to make another hit. It was a massive hit. Written by screenwriter David S. Ward, inspired by real-life cons, the brothers Fred and Charlie Gondorf, which was documented by David Muir in The Big Con, The Story of the Confidence Men. It was the darling of the year. Nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Screenplay, Art Direction, Cinematography, Costume Design, Film Editing, Best Original Song, Best Sound. It won Song, Film Editing, Costume Design, Art Direction, Screenplay, Best Director, and Best Picture.
All right. The fun, interesting fact is it wasn't intended as a Newman-Redford vehicle.
Really?
They offered it to Jack Nicholson.
Oh.
And so he turned it down.
Which role would have he?
The Paul Newman role.
Okay.
So that he turned it down. They then went to Paul Newman, who had been on a string of misses. And I wrote down the movies that he had just been in. WUSA, The Macintosh Man, Pocket Money, and Sometimes a Great Notion. I have never heard of any of them, and I'm a pretty decent Paul Newman fan.
I'm sorry.
So I thought that was interesting, that they went to him as a second choice.
Okay. I don't really have a lot to say about this movie.
Okay.
And I'm going to say what I need to say about this movie, and then I will answer any of your questions.
Okay.
This movie, to me, I'd watched it once before, years and years and years ago, and I remembered enjoying it. And I was excited to see it again because I loved the chemistry between the two and Butch Cassidy. That unheard of, the amount of chemistry they had. The chemistry was not there in this film.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, much like the last movie we talked about, I don't care. I don't care. This is supposed to be some major con, and I love a good con movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it was bogged down with so much that seemed unnecessary and unreal. I was bored.
I was a little bored.
Nice!
So, yes, I was a little bit bored with this one. I will say that I liked it, but I didn't love it. I thought it hit all of the technical pieces of a good movie well, and did not have the heart of Butch and Sundance.
Correct.
So it's like there's tons of pros as far as like the timing, the tempo, the lighting, the music, all of it seemed to hit the right points. I loved the title cards. I thought that was fun
Yep.
and whimsical. The Joplin music was fantastic. The interesting part is I didn't like the costumes. I thought they looked like a high school play of what it looked like
Yeah,
in the
they-
20s and 30s.
They kind of did, yeah.
So it was almost, you looked at the 50s clothes in American Graffiti and it was so much more authentic. These were, go out and get a page boy suit for Redford, and go out and get this kind of spats, and okay, that's what it looks like. Grab something off the costume shelf. So I didn't care for that. I liked the plot. I thought it was complicated without being too complicated. I also loved all of the actors that were the who's who of, you've seen him before and who's that guy. And Harold Gould, I thought did a beautiful job. I loved him. Ray Walston is the announcer. Ellen Bernstein. Nope. Eileen Brennan. So names are too close. Was fantastic. Did you feel like this? Here's my first question for you. Do you feel like this movie got Best Picture because Butch and Sundance didn't, and it was a makeup? Okay, that's interesting. I was wondering about that.
Yes, I will say I think that was probably a factor. We've seen that over and over again in Hollywood.
Mhm.
Like, people think that someone got snubbed, whether it was for direction or Best Picture or an acting role that they got snubbed for the year before, so the next year they get nominated and win for a role they probably shouldn't have.
Yes.
So I think that was probably a factor. I think also people just really love the two of them,
Mm-hmm.
and seeing them again on screen in a fine film got people really excited and probably elevated it more than it should have been. If those two were not in this movie, I would be surprised if it even got a nomination.
Oh, well, and I think hearing that it wasn't meant as a vehicle for them explains a lot, because they weren't together a lot. This was a Robert Redford film that Paul Newman was also in.
Yeah.
And I think that if they had been together more, their chemistry would have shown more. I think those are the only two movies they've done together,
Yeah.
right?
I actually looked it up because for some reason I thought they had done more because of that
Right.
that chemistry, but no, these were the only two. This to me is an example of you can do everything technically correct
Yes.
and above average
Yes.
and still have a meh.
Mhm.
Like there's something beyond all of the technical things that we do talk about. There is something about presenting the unknown factor for everything to come together. And when you look at it on paper or you look at it on the screen and you go through the checklist of all the items and you see everything is above average and it's or even phenomenal, but it still just doesn't hit you.
Mhm.
There's that unknown factor that we can't name, we don't know what it is, but that exists in other movies, that when all of these things come together, it's just there.
Right.
Like this, I'll call it the soul of the movie.
Well, I said heart. It had no heart.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So the other piece too is, were we supposed to? I think we were supposed to be surprised and thought that Paul Newman, killed Robert Redford in this movie. We saw him put the squib in his mouth. So.
Oh, did we?
Yes. Yeah. At one point
I
he put
missed that
something in it. He put something in his mouth, and so or like behind his teeth. And so I'm pretty sure that we were supposed to know that he was not going to get killed. And I don't know why we wouldn't assume that the FBI agent was not part of the bigger scheme. So that's the other thing, is I think it underestimated the intelligence of the audience member, because I knew that was just part of the scam.
Okay. I don't remember the first time if I was caught by it or not.
Okay.
Having seen it once before,
Right.
I knew, but I don't remember if I was caught by it. But you're correct in that I think that was supposed to be some sort of, oh my goodness, what?
They killed him.
Right,
Yes.
and then everybody's fine, and yeah, I don't think, again, I didn't care.
You didn't care? Yep. I thought it was well done, technically well done. I think it didn't have the chemistry, and I think that it did not have the heart. Exactly. So, also, I'm just gonna say, and I know that we're looking at it with different sensibilities, but the casual dropping of the N-word is still jarring to me. I'm glad it's still jarring to me. It should be jarring to everybody, and it just bothered me.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go out on a limb and say, we'll just get this one out of the way. You don't think this deserved to win?
I do not.
Good.
Okay, and I also think you did not think
That
that
is
it deserved
correct.
to win.
No.
All right, so I'm gonna guess that you think Cries and Whispers deserve to win.
So close.
American Graffiti?
Yeah.
American Graffiti.
Really?
Yes. Yep.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Nice.
So we have only deviated once thus far. I mean, twice now we've said that they got it wrong, but we've agreed
should have gotten it.
Yep. We've only disagreed once. So why in comparison to the others? Is it just the story connected with you a little bit better on top of all the technical expertise?
So it had all the technical pieces. Like I said, the Sting I took out of it because it didn't have that heart, and I don't know even how to qualify what that is that it
Right.
didn't have. It didn't have that quality. Yes, I think American Graffiti, when you look at the performances and you look, like I said, it moved along at a pace that I never wanted to know, okay, what's going to happen next, or I want to spend more time with these folks. It spent exactly enough time in each vignette as it should have. So I think what might not have pushed it over the end was I really didn't like the title cards. I really thought that messed up the tone. But that, at the end of the day, was not enough to push it back from what I thought was the best picture.
And we'll probably acknowledge this a bunch more times, but also it's you're comparing just these particular films.
Yes.
Films from previous years that were nominated but did not win, I think probably would have been, if they had been released this year,
Oh, absolutely.
would have been better, but you gotta look at what was released that year, what was nominated, and by far, to me, American Graffiti is the best film that was released.
Mhm.
Cries and Whispers I absolutely loved, and I'm probably at some point going to go back and watch it again because I have a feeling I missed a lot.
Yeah.
And I would like to better understand that film. But yes, I think American Graffiti was the best movie that was released that year.
The visual aspect, the performances, the technical piece, and the music also really did tie it together in a nice way. So, nice job.
All right. Do the liking and the subscribing and the, tell us we're super cool stuff. Also, don't forget to comment if you disagreed, if you liked something that we didn't. You can call us idiots if you do it in a nice way, otherwise I'm just gonna block you. So yeah, that's all I got.
All right, sounds great. Until next time.
See ya!
Bye-bye.